We're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so talking about sports, innovation, and entrepreneurship from the industry side. I think you just heard some great insights from the team and franchise side. Now we're going to get a little bit kind of behind the kitchen on the industry side. So I'd like to introduce our panelists first. First, in the center is Nick Cutsumpas from IBM Watson. Nick leads the Watson sports vertical in the IBM Watson ecosystem. In his role with Watson, Nick is responsible for creating partnerships with innovative sports and wellness companies, empowering them with Watson's cognitive technology. Nick graduated from Tufts University, where he played varsity baseball and graduated with a degree in psychology and entrepreneurship. He is also a part-time baseball and basketball coach in New York. Welcome, Nick. All the way at the end is Patrick Meek from UnderArmour. Patrick is a native Midwesterner with stops in Chicago and St. Louis. Currently, he leads a fantastic team that oversees Olympic sports and special projects at UnderArmour. Prior to this job, he spent over a decade traveling the world skating in circles, culminating in his representing the United States in speed skating at the 2014 Olympics. Welcome, Patrick. And to my direct left is Will McIntosh from the Golf Channel. Will McIntosh is the Senior Vice President of Business Development and Strategy for Golf Channel. Will has direct oversight of Golf Channel's digital businesses, including Golf Now, a technology and services company that under Will's leadership has grown from 1,000 golf course partners to more than 9,000 in 16 countries around the world. Will also was a successful entrepreneur at an early age, founding and building 3 distinct companies before the age of 29. Welcome, Will. So we're going to talk about innovation, current and future. We're going to talk a little bit about corporate innovation, corporate styles, and then we'll kind of get a little bit in the wild card around what I call it. But first, we're going to start off with Patrick. I want to talk about current innovation. So what are some of the recent innovations in sports that interest you the most, and why? And if you can, give some examples from internally from UnderArmour and externally, if you can.
I think right now the biggest innovation that you see in the sports world is the fact that most consumers of sports products are really viewing themselves as athletes from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep, and even during their sleeping hours. So as a result of that, the consumers are demanding a lot more of companies like UnderArmour, Nike, or accessory companies. So they want to know what is going on throughout their day, what they're eating, what their workout entails and stuff like that. So they're also demanding a lot more of the product. 5 years ago, moisture-working t-shirts weren't as ubiquitous as they are now, but now that you can buy those at Target. So I think the biggest innovation right now is that people are seeing themselves as athletes, and as a result of that, you see people looking at technology. So with UnderArmour, we recently spent nearly $1 billion on our connected fitness platform. And with that, athletes everywhere can see what they're putting in their body, how they're sleeping, and what their workouts are doing. So I think that's probably one of the more interesting spaces that we have right now.
So next, Will, I'd like to ask you the same question. So what interests you the most about technology and innovation out there now, both either internally at the Golf Channel or externally in the world of golf?
Well, if you look internally at Golf Channel, I think the story of Golf Now is certainly the most innovative thing we've done at Golf Channel, and maybe even more so in the larger NBC Universal and Comcast ecosystem, which is where we ultimately play. Golf Channel was started in 1995. Maybe other than ESPN, probably the most successful sports cable network ever created. Certainly the most successful single sports network ever created. And almost 7 years ago at this point, we said, how can we take this very successful traditional media property and do something more with it? It is and was a star-driven business at that time. It was really about Tiger, and it's very much fueled by advertising. And we were smart enough at that point to say, we've got this very passionate audience and fan base. How can we get more involved in what we would consider to be the participatory side of the business? And so that's what led us to creating Golf Now, which it's the largest technology and marketing platform for golf courses in the world. And when I got to Golf Channel 6 years ago, there were probably 20 people in the group focused on Golf Now. We're now at over 500 people focused just on Golf Now within Golf Channel's business. So I think that's the best example internally. Externally, I think you look at a company like, we look at a lot of different companies, but Major League Baseball Advanced Media is one that comes to mind. I mean, that company started building websites for Major League Baseball teams, and to think from where they were then to now they're powering HBO's streaming platform, right? I mean, I think that's a very interesting story, and then obviously what Under Armour is doing in connected fitness, I think, is another pretty good example.
Great answer. So Nick, how about you? From your perspective, it's a little different. You get to work with a lot of different companies across the spectrum in sports and innovation. So what sticks out to you as being interesting and why?
It's a good question. I think that from an internal perspective, our job is to innovate and provide the technology so that from an external perspective, some of these companies can come in and innovate. So, what I'm most excited about is specifically some of the wearable companies that we've seen. For example, there's a company right now in our ecosystem that has a baseball sleeve that has a sensor in it that tracks, velocity, stress in the arm, all these other metrics. And they're working with professional teams, but they're also working with youth sports. When you think about youth sports, all that data is given to a 9-year-old kid or a parent. How do you make that actionable? And that's something that wearable companies are now trying to take that next step with. So for us in Watson to be able to empower them to create a Watson coach and train Watson on all these things related to pitching and physical therapy, and then help that parent and that 9-year-old kid get the best out of their performance, I think is amazing, and to empower that kind of expertise. And then from that's a performance side, but from a fan engagement stadium experience, working with companies who are having in-stadium applications that can actually converse with fans from the moment they get to a venue to the moment they leave and help them have the best experience possible. So there's a few companies right now who are working to create those kind of solutions using the Watson technology.
Good stuff. So following up on that then, if you take the technologies that are kind of in incubation right now and fast forward 10 years, maybe 15 years, so year 2025, so Patrick, I'll start with you. In year 2025, if you can picture what your consumer, what your customer, the athletes look like, what they're using, what technology and innovation are they using in 10, 15 years that does not exist right now? Give us some ideas of what's coming.
I think if you look to 2025, I think every single garment that you'll be wearing by then will be a wearable. It'll be tracking your heart rate, it'll be tracking your sweat rate, and I think you'll provide the end user with more information that they ever knew was possible. And not only that, but it'll be integrated into their clothing so that it'll look like anything that you and I are wearing right now. So if I kind of look towards where apparel is going, that's probably where it is. And I think it's the same thing along the lines of footwear. Footwear soon will be able to tell you as you're running whether or not you're running properly in real time. And that's actually probably even closer than 2025 at this point.
And Will, from the golfer's perspective, if you fast forward 10, 15 years, year 2025, what sorts of technology do you think golfers are going to be using that do not exist now?
I think to Patrick's point, you'll see a lot of similar technology around helping golfers improve their games with wearable devices, et cetera. And you're seeing some of that now. For us, what we're really focused on is removing friction. So it's like if you've ever used Uber, that experience of using Uber and not having to pull out your credit card, not having to tip a driver, et cetera. It's how do you bring that to golf? And if you've ever played golf, especially at a public golf course, you would know that it can be not the best customer service experience. You have to go to the pro shop on a Saturday morning, they're busy, there's one guy there, you're standing in line with 10 other people, you then have to get the receipt, you have to take the receipt to the starter, who tends to be an older gentleman who doesn't even want to talk to you anyway. And so it's like, how can we bring that experience where you can get your tee time through golf now, and then you can literally just walk up to the first tee and play golf and not have to worry about any of that other stuff. So that's what we envision for the future, and that's what we're focused on.
And Nick, I'll turn a little bit differently for you. So with the companies and the technologies that you're starting to work with now, what do you predict in 10 years are going to be some of the areas that you think the startups or the more stable companies are going to be working on?
I think the biggest push right now, and many of you have seen some of the VR companies that are exploding onto the scene from a fan engagement and performance standpoint, I think it's unbelievable. The ability to take vision and computer vision and start to analyze some of this information at scale. I mean, our CEO, Jeannie Rometty, said that she wants Watson to eventually have all 5 senses. which I think is kind of terrifying from a personal perspective. But I think our big push right now is in vision, and we're investing all of our research dollars in that. And I think from a sports context, to be able to look at a golfer's swing, instead of having necessarily to go to a pro, to have Watson, diagnose what's happening in your swing. And that way you don't necessarily need to have that interaction. Obviously you could still go and get the coaching, but I think the ability to have Watson be able to recognize some of these key touch points from a physical movement perspective, I think it's going to change the way we do business within Watson, and I think the startups themselves are going to keep pushing that boundary even further.
Great stuff. So I'm going to shift a little bit and talk about how your companies handle innovation a little bit. And so you all work for pretty significant, sizable companies. You have internal R&D departments. You have internal innovation departments. So how do you balance the internal and the external? Are you looking for outside ideas? Is it the not invented here syndrome? How do you balance that? Will, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, my experiences really within Comcast, which is ultimately who I work for, has been interesting because if you think about our lineage, you have Comcast, and under that you have NBC Universal, and under that you have NBC Sports, and under that you have Golf Channel, right? And at each of those levels, you have really what I would consider to be innovative leaders. Brian Roberts, Steve Burt, Mark Lazarus, my boss, Mike McCarley, the president of Golf Channel. And so I do think that they have a very keen understanding that we need to be innovative. We have a lot of resources internally that fortunately we've been able to deploy for golf specifically, but it's happening throughout our entire organization. I don't think there's any one right way to do it. We build, we buy, we partner, we do all those things every day, and it really just depends on what the opportunity is for our organization.
Nick, how about you at IBM?
I'd say within our specific group, everything we do is external, because it's sort of humbling for us at IBM to realize that we can't solve every problem, and for us to go out and provide this technology for startups to use for free up front and let them use this in unique ways. It's great for us because it allows us to be more agile, and it allows us to be involved in other industries such as sports and wellness that we may not have never gotten into as a business already. And from an internal standpoint, it's great because we're always developing new technologies and innovating to the point where I can go to partners that I already have and say, hey, have you seen this new technology that we have? Right now, there's 32 different API capabilities within our ecosystem. We plan to push that to 50 by next year, and it's just going to continue to get better from there. But I think from the external standpoint, to be able to see what our partners are doing, it helps us inspire new ideas from an internal perspective and figure out what technology is going to be the future and how we can innovate to make that happen.
So, Patrick, at UnderArmour, I know you have an outside innovation departments, innovation development departments. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so at UnderArmour, they always say that we have to create our defining product, and we really take that seriously. So we have a innovation department that is focused on looking, let's say, 5 to 10 years down the road. And it's about a 100-person department that's solely what they're focused on at this point. And even not on the innovation side, most of the inline team and team sports categories are trying to make that defining product in whatever silo that they're going after. So whether you're in American football or tennis, your goal is to make the best product possible by 2017. So that's where we're working on right now. So it's innovation is definitely wound into the fabric of our company, and I think that will remain for a long time.
So if you can, I'd like to follow up on that, Patrick. So tell us about the culture within UnderArmour, because UnderArmour certainly started off as being that underdog type of mentality, but now you certainly you're at the size where can you still consider yourself an underdog?
Yeah, we definitely still consider ourselves an underdog. When you compare us to our biggest competitor out in Oregon, we're only 1/10 the size of them. So we definitely consider ourselves the small guy in the room. And if you just look at where we're located, if there's ever a city that's an underdog, it's Baltimore right now. So we really, that is ingrained into our culture, and you see that every day with the young, hungry people that come to work at our campus.
So I'd like to follow up a little bit with Will and Nick. That I know you guys are very innovative parts of large, established, publicly traded companies. And having, my experience having worked for publicly traded entities and also more startups, they always talk about fostering a culture of innovation. The startups have it by necessity. The larger companies tend to say we have it, and then then you really get in there and you figure out whether they do or not. So talk about that balance a little bit. How do you create a culture of innovation in a corporate environment where you're often rewarded for playing defense? So, Nick, how about that at IBM first?
It's challenging, especially with IBM. We're a 100-year-old company, and people who work with us are asking me about Big Blue and servers, and I honestly have no idea about that side of the business, and there's a reason for that. And if you think about the Watson Group in general, we are a startup, and we function at a very fast pace. And I've had conversations with teams and leagues and other startups that say, why would we work with IBM? You guys are such a big company. And that frustrates me because the culture is so young and we're moving so fast now that it's really unbelievable to see how quickly we can expand this Watson technology, because at the end of the day we can sell to major businesses and make these $1 million deals, but within the ecosystem our job is to evangelize this message. And if we can give this technology to companies across different verticals, sports in particular is something that I think is exploding because of the amount of technology and startup attention. But it's fun to watch us move quickly and sort of defy expectations that some partners may have about us.
Will, how about you?
Yeah, I think if you look at our organization, it's really, it's more or less a conglomerate of, I don't know, probably over 50 companies that are focused on media or entertainment or technology or some combination of the three. And I think all of our leadership is aware that you can't set culture or values at such a high level and expect that to filter down one for one into an organization like Golf Now as an example. And so when you talk about our culture, the culture of Golf Now, we really have 4 tenets. One is to keep a startup spirit, right, which is a lot of what's led us here today. And I think it's important to us because what we're really doing is we're connecting people to their passion. And so if we're trying to recruit a software engineer in Orlando, Florida, who's never picked up a golf club, it can't be about golf. That's not why they're coming to work for us. They can't get their head around connecting people to their passion. And so that's really what we try to focus on.
Good stuff. Patrick, I want to come back to something that you mentioned before, that so UnderArmour has spent I know over $700 million in acquiring several digital fitness companies, and we're here to talk about sports innovation and investing in sports. So I definitely want to ask you about that. Your overall strategy behind those acquisitions, and how do you feel it's going?
Yeah, I think for the most part, we viewed it as a very successful venture. So at this point, there are over 150 million people who have one of our apps on their phone that are logging weekly workouts, nutrition, or their sleep. And when you have that kind of touch point to an individual, and you can also hopefully translate that to sales, it's a really great thing for any company to have. I think the biggest thing that we want to do is put it all in one ecosystem so that when you wake up in the morning, that's the first app you open before you open Twitter or Facebook or whatever else, and you see how you slept, and then you can get your workout, and you can see how cold it is outside, and you can determine what you're going to wear as far as your apparel. So if we can be that to every athlete in this room, then I think we've done our job.
How about the continued growth of that? Is the strategy to continue acquiring companies that, or is it you've acquired enough and it's going to be internal development?
No, I know we recently acquired another small startup outside of Austin, and we'll definitely continue to do that as the space evolves, because as you see in places like Austin and San Francisco, and even here in St. Louis, people are making some really amazing products that we'd be remiss if we just said that we can all do it internally now that we have a Silicon Valley office. We're definitely exploring to see what people are doing outside the greater UnderArmour system, so that'll never stop.
And are there any specific new areas or new categories that you'd say would be on your radar for future acquisitions?
I think what I would be interested in more and more is how do you bring people who want to work out together. So, I mean, no one really loves running at 5 a.m. if it's 40 degrees outside or colder, but how do you organize a group that does it in a location like the greater New York City area? I'm sure there's on any given block, there's 100 people who would like to go running, and it's a lot easier to do that if you are connected some way on an app. So I think that's where the space is going, less individual and more as a collective unit, if I had to make a guess.
Nick, so if anybody has watched TV or a sporting event in the last, I don't know, month or two, you see these IBM Watson commercials, right? I was going to ask you about what your advertising budget is, but maybe we won't go there. But it just seems that it's a more recent flurry of activity. So what's the reason for that, and what is the overall strategy for Watson and sports?
It's true. There are a lot of commercials out there, and they're awesome commercials. They make my job easy because they bring in companies, especially in sports. Also makes my job difficult because people think Watson can do anything. But the focus is now becoming more sports-oriented, and it's funny, sort of before I came to the Watson ecosystem, there was no one working in sports. And I got there and I found it shocking, and I sort of asked my boss, hey, why aren't we working here? He's like, oh, sports is just something that you play. And I asked him, I was like, hey, can we pursue this as an industry? And credit to him, he let me run with that, and from that point on, our focus has really been on expanding our sports ecosystem. We do that in a couple different ways. The first way is through the startups, which we've collected many, and obviously Stadia Ventures is an opportunity for us to expand that from an accelerator perspective. But when you look at our larger strategy within IBM, we're focusing on our sponsorship partners we already have in both the PGA and tennis. But now we're starting to expand to other sports because we realize that there's value in the stadium experiences that we can create and the fan engagement that we can offer someone. So to have Watson go through and be able to understand who a fan is, understand the digital content, and enhance that experience all around, this is something that we're focused on moving forward across all different kinds of sports. So don't be surprised to see more of those partnerships forming.
Great. And Will, so Golf Channel really has become the source to go to for golfers. Now, I know when I was in the golf business 15, 20 years ago, it was Golf Digest. It was all the published print media, and that was the source where you went for information. And now it really has become the Golf Channel, starting from the tournaments to instruction to now Golf Now, linking you to the golf course. So what's on the horizon? If you fast forward a few years, where are we going to see Golf Channel helping out the golfer in ways that might surprise us in a few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Golf Now, we still have a lot of growth opportunities in North America, and then we're really focused on the UK and Ireland. I think international expansion will certainly be part of that. I think for Golf Channel, I think it's a really interesting time to be in the media space because you have a lot of big-time advertisers who are now really questioning what the money they're spending is really doing for them. And so what we're seeing some interesting things happening where digital media and e-commerce are coming together. And if you think about a lot of the relationships we have that really drive our business, it's with some of these endemic golf companies. So the equipment manufacturers, the people that really benefit from people playing the game of golf. So that will be an area where we focus. And whether it's e-commerce or online retail, I could definitely see us kind of heading in that direction moving forward.
Good. So I'd like to shift a little bit and talk about the entrepreneurs, because I know we have our entrepreneurs that we're going to have up here on stage in a few minutes. We have some other entrepreneurs certainly that are in the room. So from your aspect, and I'll go back and start with you, Patrick. What role does the sports entrepreneur play in your view of UnderArmour's view of the innovation landscape? What characteristics do you look for in an acquisition or program partner? And then finally, what's the best way for an entrepreneur to contact you if they think they have an idea that you'd be interested in?
Yeah, I think for the most part, what we've looked at for a lot of the companies that we either partnered with, licensed with, or purchased outright is not only a great product, but great leaders and people who are creative, very thoughtful, and have ideas beyond what they may be currently working on. And you see that a lot, that people come in with one product and they eventually get pulled into another project and have been very successful because they're leaders not just in that one small product. I think the easiest way to reach out to UnderArmour is that every year we have a very similar event to this, where we have startups come in and pitch to our CEO and a bunch of our other senior executives. And that happens in October of every year. And that's probably the easiest way for companies to come in and be part of our entire system.
So it's kind of like you have your own Shark Tank.
We do, yeah. So I've been part of it this past year, and I wouldn't say it's as intense as the TV show, but our CEO, Kevin Plank, definitely asked some hard questions up there for the companies.
So Will, you're in a very unique position that you've been an entrepreneur, you've been acquired by the Golf Channel. So within that organization, what are you looking for now in potential acquisitions or partnerships, and how should entrepreneurs contact you? How would you like to be contacted?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to regurgitate exactly what Patrick said, but I do think it's about the product, about having a proven product that companies are actually using, right? And then more than that, it's about the people. And over the last 8 years, we've made 16 acquisitions to kind of grow the Golf Now business. Now that sounds like a big number. In some respects, 80% of our growth's been organic, but I would say without fail, in each of those situations, there had to be some real synergy, with what we were acquiring, with what the mission of Golf Channel or Golf Now was. And also without fail, we inherited some really good people in those deals. How to get in touch with our company, if it's related to sports or golf, I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. And we're certainly interested on being opportunistic if there are opportunities out there.
Nick, how about you? In terms of entrepreneurs out there, what do you see are the characteristics of the more successful ones, and how do you think they should go about contacting potential partners?
I think what's great about our system is that entrepreneurs reach out to us just already because they see Watson, it's so visible. But when we're actually evaluating a company, the first thing I look at is what is their leadership. Cognitive technology is something completely new in the industry, and to see people come in with visions and ideas, it's exciting for us because we're essentially creating products that don't exist yet. And to see someone come in with a vision and an idea and an enthusiasm and passion for what they're doing, obviously focused on the sports side, but across any industry, it's really encouraging to see that and then work with companies who are then going to execute that and work quicker than we can already. And in terms of getting in touch with Watson and learning about some of the things that we can offer from our partnership perspective, in many different ways. First, we usually have a World of Watson event in May where we invite all of our partners to showcase some of the amazing things that Watson is doing across different industries. And also, we have a team of business development managers that are working to find these next great companies and work with them and see what ideas they have that can change the way that we envision the Watson technology in the future. So it's very easy to find us on LinkedIn, and also we invite people to our Astor Place office where they can go through a Watson Experience tour, which is fantastic. So if anyone has any questions about that, they can easily get in touch with us.
All right. So I'm going to go a little off script and ask you guys some more creative questions as your experiences in your categories. So Patrick, you're an Olympic athlete, and you manage the Olympic activities for UnderArmour. So if you could wave the magic wand, and you are now in charge of the IOC, the US, all Olympic, you are the Olympics czar, in charge of everything Olympics. What would be your first few things that you would do?
So unfortunately, I don't think we have like 2 hours to spend on the topic, but I think if I had to change anything at this point, it's sustainability for the Olympic movement. You look at what happened in Sochi and what's most likely going to happen in Rio, and they have not set up sustainable models, not only for the cities after the games, but also for the sports in general. I think what London did and what some other national Olympic committees have done, it should be the model, but unfortunately it's the exception, not the rule. So I think for Olympic sports to continue to foster and not get left behind by action sports and whatnot, we need to figure out a better way to make these sports more sustainable through media, through advertisement, and through engaging young people.
Great. So, Will, I'm going to twist a little bit, same type of question, but now you're in the world of golf, so you bundle up the USGA, PGA Tour, PGA of America, all the equipment manufacturers, and now you are the czar sitting on top of all of them.
I think it's pretty easy. You need to make golf less stodgy, and you need to make it more fun for everybody that wants to be involved with it. It's viewed as an elitist sport for a reason. It's already difficult. It does take time. It's never been more affordable or more accessible, which is really what we're focused on. but we've got to make it more fun. Does it really matter what you show up and wear at the golf course to play? It shouldn't, right? So I'd focus on making it fun, and I'd let these equipment manufacturers really bifurcate what they're doing for the amateur golfer. I want a driver where if I hit it, if I could just make contact with the ball, it goes 250 yards and goes straight, right? So I think there's a lot of things these guys could do.
Just making it more fun, more accessible. I love it, love it. So Nick, you get to see all the different sports leagues. You're in New York City, where most of them have their headquarters. So you take Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL. All of a sudden, you sit on top of all of those. Wave that magic wand. What are you doing?
Well, aside from season tickets, I think that the biggest thing I would focus on is making sure that every stadium gets connected. And most of the stadiums are doing that already. But if we can push the boundary on this and make every experience that a fan has somewhat tech-oriented, I think that's just the direction that has to go anyway. You look at stadiums, and Cardinals are a rare exception where people actually watch the game. But when you go to a Yankee game or a Met game in New York, half the fans aren't even in the seats because they're doing something else in the stadium or they're on their phones. And as a baseball purist, that bothers me. But you have to cater to that audience, and if we can find ways to engage fans from the moment they get to a stadium to the fans that are the second screen fans, which I think are probably more important since that's the 99% of the fan base. If we can find ways to engage them with technology, obviously I prefer a few watts of technology, but I think that's the idea, and to engage those 99% and find creative ways to do that, I think that's what would be the first initiative.
I was waiting for the automated home plate or the some sort of instant replay. No? Okay. So we're going to open up for questions in a minute, but I'm going to finalize with one question. So I'm going to talk about your experience with Stadia Ventures. If you could talk about why are you here? Are you guys have all traveled to be with us? Why are you here? What is it about Stadia Ventures that we're doing, and what the St. Louis entrepreneurship ecosystem?
Yeah, as a native St. Louisan, I actually couldn't be more proud that Stadia has kind of taken on the role of innovation. And when I left St. Louis when I was 18 years old, and looking back on it from where St. Louis was 12 years ago until where it is now, it's changed drastically. And the startup world that we have here in St. Louis, I think in a lot of ways rivals places like Austin or San Francisco. And I think that's something that is really exciting to be part of. And obviously, being in the sports world and a former athlete, definitely have a passion for what these fine companies are doing. And I think it's only going to get better from here. What Stadia is set up themselves and the foundation that they've created, I'm really excited to see, and I know UnderArmour is excited to see what happens in the future.
Great. Will, what about you?
Well, I mean, it's very specifically, we have a relationship with a company you guys are going to hear from in a little bit, Winning Identity, and Chou is really who brought me into the introduction with you, Art. So we're here to support Chou and his company. There's not a lot of sports technology accelerators out there, so I think it's phenomenal what you're doing here. For the St. Louis-based companies, I'd kind of go back to a comment that Kevin made in the last panel, which is, the world has become very small with technology. Don't feel like you need to leave St. Louis and go to Silicon Valley to build a great company. You don't have to. Of the 16 deals we've done, not one of those have been based in California. So I would just say what's happening here is obviously special, and you guys should stick with it.
Great stuff. Nick, what about you?
It's funny coming from New York and seeing what my colleagues talk about in terms of entrepreneurship, and for them it's all New York and San Francisco, and everything else is just a flyover state. So when I tell them I'm coming out to St. Louis because the entrepreneurship scene is amazing, they look at me like I'm crazy. But coming in here and seeing the work that you've done with the startups, two of which I'm working with within our ecosystem, it's amazing to see the energy and passion that exists here. And I think it's only going to help the city grow. And if we can get involved with some of these cities that are growing from an entrepreneurial and startup perspective, it's great for us because these companies are great companies. They're already somewhat established and vetted by you and Tim. So to be able to come in here and partner with companies and accelerators that are doing these kind of innovative things in places like St. Louis, it fits perfectly with what we're trying to accomplish with Watson.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what, we have a few minutes. Let's open up for questions, if we do have any questions from the audience for our panel. Any questions on Innovation, what Under Armour's working on next? Question over here.
Ask you is, what are you doing for the young youth to come into golf and sports like that? I notice, I go on a golf course and I occasionally see young people being trained to play golf. And I know it's irritating because sometimes you gotta wait and wait. But I do think in order to move forward, there should be something to encourage even grade school children to play golf. And I was wondering if any of you have any idea on that.
Totally agree. If you watch Golf Channel enough, you will know that we're very focused on a number of youth initiatives. One is a platform that we launched, I think at this point 2 years ago, with Augusta National and the PGA of America around this concept of a tournament, an annual tournament called Drive, Chip, and Putt. So you've got, I think at this point, there's over 50,000 kids now in the U.S. who are competing in these local and regional events to ultimately have an opportunity to participate in this national championship that happens every year at Augusta National the week before the Masters is played. We're very focused there. We're also partnering with the PGA of America. One of their biggest growth opportunities and things that they focused on in the last few years is the creation of the PGA Junior Leagues. So they've created this very easy way for kids to get involved in sport and in a team environment that's not like the traditional game of golf, to become exposed to golf and compete in more of a team-oriented environment. So, the golf industry has recognized that youth participation is an issue, and it's something that a lot of different companies are focused on. And the best thing that we can do for that is between NBC and Golf Channel is really show that to a massive audience, to let them understand that there are ways that you can get kids easily involved with golf.
And to follow up on that, I think youth sports is one of the most exciting parts about sports right now for a couple of reasons. Number one is that you look at all the sports that kids are playing now and the specialization, and I don't necessarily agree with the specialization, but if you're able to provide something that is accessible for them, if you have a 10-year-old kid who doesn't have access to a golf pro or a basketball coach who can train them on these things, to have Watson come in and be that friendly coach where they can literally just ask a question and get an answer and get a drill, get recommendations for how they can improve their game. It's allowing kids who may not have the ability to get that kind of coaching and get that kind of training to get information that will help them A, appreciate and love the sport, but B, potentially have a career in that sport and go beyond.
Yeah, and we have a young kid named Jordan Speaks who I hopefully will help young kids want to get more into golf. But we've actually seen that golf sales in our youth division have increased exponentially over the past year since he's kind of taken the tour by storm. So hopefully having a young, fresh face in that space will help accelerate kids wanting to participate, even before high school.
Any other questions from the audience?
My question is for Nick. You mentioned when you're looking for companies to partner with, is that, you mentioned you look for leaders. Did you mean leaders as far as the leadership team, or you're making bets on who's going to be the you're sort of picking winners in the industry 5 years down the line?
I'd say it's a combination of both. I mean, it's a balancing act. You could have really established companies coming in that are doing really well in revenue, but their leadership team might not be committed to something like this. At the same time, we're working with companies that have 3 or 4 people, and they're small companies, but the leadership teams themselves are so passionate and have such a vision and also a strategy for how they want to accomplish some of these goals that they're worth partnering and taking that risk from IBM Watson's perspective. So I think it is a balance, but in that particular question, I was referring to actually the leadership teams, although if we can get the leaders in those industries, it's even better for us.
Any other questions? Question in the back?
This is actually for Under Armour, and Art mentioned this question half jokingly, I think. What is the next trend for apparel that science is trying to develop? And we've seen over the last several years from breathability to obviously with Gore-Tex and preventing water infiltration, to compression, to increasing the tensile strength of fabrics? Like, what's the next thing that we should be seeing in 5 to 10 years from an innovative textile company?
I think if I had to pick one thing, it would be to have a outerwear piece that does all of the things that you just mentioned. So the biggest issue that most people have if they have a really nice outerwear piece is, you start your run, you're a little cold, but within half a mile, you're sweating because the garment doesn't breathe, or it's not waterproof. So I think there are textiles that will be on the market within the next 4 to 5 years that will breathe like a t-shirt, that will keep you dry from snow or rain, and will be somewhat stylish. So the thing we run into with a lot of the high-end textiles and cuts right now is they aren't stylish. You can't wear them to the office. But I think you'll see that move in the next couple of years, where high-end textiles will also be in office wear.
Any other questions? Okay, well that will wrap it up, and thank you very much for our panel. Have a round of applause for our panel on sports innovation.